Melbourne Pastor Rob Buckingham built a friendship with the now executed men, visiting them on death row with his wife Christy.
Rob Buckingham joins us now in the studio. Rob, good morning and thank you for making time.
Good morning.
First of all, can I just ask you your reaction when you hear that statement from Indonesia's ambassador expressing sympathy to the families?
It sounds rather bizarre to me. I mean, it's nice that they've offered sympathy, but it's rather bizarre. You know, we take them out, we ignore all of the requests for mercy, for clemency, for a death sentence to be commuted to a life sentence. We take them out, shoot them, and then we say sorry. It sounds bizarre.
Is it an expression of sympathy that you're prepared to accept?
I guess so. I mean, I really, I feel more for the families of the boys, for the Chan and Sukumaran families. I guess so, but I'm really not sure at this early stage. It sounds, as I say, it sounds rather strange to me.
Yeah. Rob, your wife Christy, of course, she was one of the spiritual advisors.
Yes.
You also had this close personal contact with the men. What has she said about the events of earlier this week and the things that we're perhaps, we should know about?
She was with Myuran right to the very end, and we actually had a very long conversation this morning. She rang in the early hours of this morning. She's still in Indonesia. She said the boys were absolutely amazing. They conducted themselves with great dignity and with great courage, and they faced their fate right to the end, very, very strongly. In fact, they and the other 6 prisoners that were led out to execution were singing as they walked out onto the killing field. They were singing the words "Amazing Grace" to the old hymn.
Did they know that Mary Jane Veloso, one of the others that was due to be executed, that had been at least postponed? Did they
right
get
at the
news?
last moment, yes.
Did that bring them some joy?
Yes, it did, very much so. We were all grateful for that because we were all very aware that Mary Jane was innocent, that she had been set up in a trafficking ring. And so for her to get off, she was let off as she was saying goodbye to her 2 young sons. And then they approached her and said, "We're not going to execute you." So yeah, hugely relieved.
Did Christy feel that her presence was useful, that she was able to contribute something in those last days and moments of their lives?
Yes, very much so. It was great too. I mean, we've known the boys for many years, and we've developed a great friendship, and we've worked alongside them for many years. And so for her to be particularly with Myuran, but also with Andrew in those last moments was very, very significant.
Did the other prisoners feel a need to call on her for support as well?
Not as far as I know. I think everyone had their own choice of a spiritual advisor, so she has focused her time particularly on Mayu.
We heard a lot over the last 10 years about the rehabilitation process and how significant and inspiring that was. From your point of view, maybe it's just looking for a silver lining here, but was there something of an act of redemption in the way these men were able to meet their end? Yeah,
very much so. They were very sorry for what they did. They have apologised to Indonesia. They've also apologised to the Australians. And they've worked extremely hard over the last 10 years, or almost 10 years, not just rehabilitating themselves, but rehabilitating many others. And so I think both guys leave an incredible legacy, to tell you the truth, of hundreds of people who were criminals and are now reformed, are now out of jail and living good lives. I've had the privilege of meeting many of them, and so the boys certainly leave a great legacy.
There are still a number of Australians who look at those boys and the original crime for which they were convicted and say that it was going to bring pain and misery back to so many Australians here, and some even believe that they got what they deserved. Given what you know of those young men and their rehabilitation, what would you say to those Australians who think that?
I totally understand what they're saying, and I realise that what Myuran and Andrew did was wrong. They realised that as well. They trafficked drugs. Their hope was that every drug trafficker would be caught. I think as well that the people higher up the chain, as it were, would be caught as well. Often the people that are caught are not the kingpins, they're the lower down, and they're the drug mules who are often groomed for such a role. But I understand the anger of Australians at drug trafficking. I think drugs do a tremendous amount of damage, and both the boys became radically anti-drugs.
Well, there's a high-profile politician here in Australia who would like to see a national discussion, he said a domestic discussion on the issue of the death penalty in recognition, he says, of those people who have those strong feelings about the Bali Nine. Do you think there'd be any usefulness in having a discussion around the death penalty here in Australia?
I think it's always useful to discuss things. I think Australia, obviously, we have ratified an international agreement that we will never reintroduce the death penalty. But I think a healthy discussion on any issue is always very helpful.
Do you sense, Rob, that this is the start of something, or is there a danger that the death of these young men will become something of a historical footnote? We don't think that often, most people, I suppose, about previous Australians, Barlow and Chambers, Michael McAuliffe and Myuran. Those names do pass into history quite quickly.
They do, and I guess, you know, with the news cycle the way it is these days, we do tend to move on quite quickly, and I totally understand that in the world that we live in. I would hope that in some shape or form, though, the legacy that Andrew and Myuran left will live on. Michael Chan particularly asked that his brother would not be remembered as the kingpin, that he would be remembered as the pastor.
Good to see you this morning, Rob Buckingham. Thanks for making time for us.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.